Welcome to episode 14 of the Unexceptional Moms podcast. I'm Erin Lorraine.
And I am Ellen Stembo, and we're going to be talking about when special needs families go to church. This is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for
I know you
really long time.
Let's do it. So remind me again, we're going to talk about...
we are going to talk about the challenges that we face as special needs families. We are going to talk about things that would be helpful if churches would do to receive us. We are going to talk about some churches that are doing it right as well. And one thing that we do want to point out is that we are not here to berate the church. So this is not a podcast against the church, but we do want to talk about the reality of our experiences when we go to church.
And when we talk about the reality and what we need, we're giving the church the opportunity to learn. So this isn't about,
everything that church is doing wrong.
Exactly. It's about how they can be a better support to families with family members with special needs.
Yes, and this is something that I am super passionate about. I wrote a blog post about church and disability about 3 years ago, and after I wrote that, I had over 100 messages from special needs families sharing their stories about church of heartache. And even some of those were messages from pastors and leaders that said that they were not even aware that there was a need.
Right.
So from there, that's actually when I decided that I needed to do something, and that's when I started Disability Matters, which is my organization with the mission to encourage every church to embrace disability and the vision to see disability as an organic part of every church. So I go and I speak at churches. I've been to Erin's church to talk about the 5 stages of disability attitudes, and it's something I'm really passionate about. So Erin is going to keep me in check as we get going. And before I forget, yes, we do have a freebie, and the freebie is the 5 stages of disability attitudes. It's a handout, and it's put up by Elam Christian Services, and it really walks people through the 5 stages. And we have talked about the 5 stages before here.
Yep.
Actually, most of the time when I go speak at a church, I always bring up the 5 stages, because we can't talk about disability if we don't understand where we fall in the disability attitudes.
Right.
And as parents, sometimes we don't even get it. That's a reality, especially if we're able-bodied. I think parents who are also disabled obviously are going to get it much quicker, but the reality, if you're able-bodied, if I'm able-bodied, we have a lot to learn. So anyway, as we get started, I just posted on my Facebook page a question, and I kind of asked, if you're a special needs family, what has been your experience? And Erin and I were talking a little bit, but overwhelmingly, the majority of people, unfortunately, they have not had a very good experience.
And I have. Our church is still working on our special needs ministry. There's a lot of work to be done. We're certainly not where we hope to be, but I've had great support from my church. I've had great support from people who have come beside my kids. So it breaks my heart, really, when I hear those stories, because they're out there for sure. What kind of things are you hearing?
So some of the things that I hear, a lot of families feel pretty invisible. So they go to the service, they go to church, they've been attending for a number of months, sometimes even years, and then they stop coming and nobody even calls them. It's like nobody even noticed that they were gone. And when that happens, there is this, there's a hurt, but there's this disconnect. Why would I go to a church where people are not even aware if I'm not there?
Right.
Another thing that's pretty common is the idea of healing. That you have all these parents going to church, and what church members want to talk about is healing. Let's pray for healing for your child, which there is a time and place for healing.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to disability, disability is part of life, and it is not people are not broken. Disabled people are not broken and they don't need to be fixed. We are all members of the body of Christ. And I think about, because we both have children with Down syndrome and it's a genetic condition. And when we talk about Psalm 139, that we're fearfully and wonderfully made, every single chromosome in our kids was intended to be that way. And I like that it's a genetic, condition, because it kind of explains it in a way that's more relatable. But along with that, then there is the idea that disability is a result of sin.
Right.
So I think about when my daughter was born with Down syndrome, I actually had a good friend of mine say to me that I was being punished for my sin, that God was punishing me for my sin. So having a child with a disability apparently was a punishment. And thank goodness at the time I knew better than that. And I knew that my daughter was fearfully and wonderfully made. And I knew that she was exactly who God intended her to be. But that idea is still out there.
Right. Right. Very much so.
And something that's also very common is, families being asked to not come back. I mean, unfortunately, that happens.
Because they can't handle their kids?
Yes. They don't know what to do to help, but they're not trying to come up with solutions. So rather than trying to come up with solutions, it's, we don't know how to help you. We don't know what to do with your child. Your child is being disruptive. You can't come. And that is so hurtful. Sensory overload.
Yes.
I mean,
well, children's ministry is designed for fun and excitement, and sometimes our kids can't handle that. Yes.
Not only that, but even if you think about the main sanctuary, or where you have the sermon, if you're having worship, it's probably going to be loud.
Yeah. Right.
And depending on the churches, because I hear that, is that there are churches that are bigger churches and they even have strobe lights and, and lights that come in and out. And somebody commented their child gets seizures with strobe lights, so they can't even go and be a part of the, they can't even go be a part of the service. So there's that sensory component and that sensory piece. And the other thing that's really, I think, important for us to think about and to talk about is the fact that there's a lot of adults with disabilities that are not in our churches. So maybe we as parents, so we are taking our children to church, but eventually our children are going to grow up and a lot of them are going to choose whether they go to church or not. So I did want to share a little bit. There is a series, like a faith series, on the blog post Tonia says, and it's really phenomenal because it's really an honest look at experiences as a disabled adult within different churches. So at the end of her series, she closes and she says, while there have been glimpses of acceptance and opportunities to be a part of things, it has mostly been painful. Nearly a decade after setting foot in a church, speaking about Christianity feels a bit like ripping a Band-Aid off a gaping wound. I feel vulnerable and judged. I feel unsafe and out of place. While I understand that not all churches are places where we with disabilities are singled out, that has been my experience.
Wow.
And I mean, that's kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal. Definitely.
Yes. And unfortunately, from a lot of adults that I know, they have similar stories to tell. So there is some disconnect happening, right? Well,
adults are really interesting too, because especially if you're talking about an adult who maybe isn't independent, the church offers a lot of things for kids, and then it drops off once you're an adult.
Yes. And that's another comment that people were saying. Things were really good when my child was little, but the older my kid got, all of a sudden.
We see disability ministry as a child thing, and it's a person thing.
It's a person thing.
Yeah.
And really, eventually, we shouldn't even have to talk about disability ministry because everyone should belong in a church setting. Absolutely. Having said that, I think that when you're talking about adults,
who can't handle the larger service, or the parents who are still caring for them and would love an hour to worship without having, to care for their child. I think it would be great to have an option for adults as well as children to get a different type of service.
Absolutely. And there are some churches that do that. There are some churches that have different services tailored for adults with disabilities. My only reservation with some of those services is that sometimes they have someone with a disability come in and they're not giving a choice into which service they want to participate.
Oh, yeah.
So automatically they go to the disability ministry class or service. And my friend Denise, who has cerebral palsy, she often says, we are not all cookie cutters.
Right.
We're individuals with different personalities, with different gifts and talents, and we have something to offer the church.
Wow.
Which is absolutely true. Everyone has something to offer the church. And I mean, we've talked about some faith issues, but maybe not about this. But if we really believe that we're all part of the body of Christ,
right,
then we need people with disabilities to be in our churches.
Absolutely.
And our families need to be there too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the heartache. And, having been a pastor's wife for 13 years, I had the privilege of being in a position of leadership where we could do something about it, and where we could try to do things right. I won't say that we got everything right, because I'm sure that we made mistakes, but our goal was that every person walking through our church was included and not just tolerated. Because there's a difference. But not everybody has that opportunity.
Right.
And I often say, if you see a special needs parent sitting alone in the foyer, go sit with them. Let them sit alone. Because why would they bother come to church if they end up sitting in the foyer trying to help a child that's having maybe a sensory overload, or just can't handle being there?
Right.
Or if they go to church and they keep calling and saying, can you please come and get your child? Why bother?
Right. I had a situation at a church that I went to a while back, not the one I'm at now, a really good thing that happened. I was headed to church with Oksana, and at that time, I had two choices. She could go to church with me, or I could go to Sunday school with her. But there was no really way for me to leave her at that time. And I had just really not been in a great place and just really needed time to come worship. And I got to church and realized I had forgotten to bring. So when she would come to church with me, I would usually bring like something to color, something to look at, so she would be okay. Because it was asking a lot of her. And I had forgotten all of it. So I could not go to church. And I sat on a bench in the middle of the children's ministry and started to cry. And a woman came up to me and asked how she could help me. And she ended up taking Oksana. And Oksana had a blast with this woman. They ended up taking her they had a separate room with a ball pit, kind of a sensory room. She took her in there. She did activities with her. There were other kids with special needs in there. And I got to go to church. And that doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't. We have some friends, and they had a child with autism, and they could not go to church together. So every Sunday...
We did that for a long time.
Yes. So every Sunday, one of the parents would stay home while the other parent would go to church. They did this for over 20 years. But here's my thing, and this is what I would ask that church that they attended. Why is it that in 20 years, not one person said, we would like to see you guys come to church as a family, come to church as a couple? So what about we have someone that can spend time with your child at church? And if your child coming to church is really not going to work, what about someone comes over to your home to stay with your child so you can go to church? Because there are solutions.
There are.
Right?
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Let's talk about some solutions.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, first of all, because when I go and I speak at churches, or when I talk to pastors, sometimes I hear people say, we can't serve everyone, and our church is not called to do special needs ministry. And now I have to say, I used to be that person. And anybody that has heard my testimony has heard me say that I actually remember thinking at some point I was not called to special needs ministry when I was talking to a friend about a vacation Bible school for kids with special needs. But now that I know better, I would say, if you could show me in the Bible where it says you can love this one and this one and this one, but don't worry, you don't have to love that one, then I'll say, okay, maybe you're not called. Mm-hmm. But also, there's James 2:1. And this is like the really convicting verse, because once I say this, once I say, okay, explain to me, James 2:1, why you're not called, then the excuses go out the window. This is what it says. It says, dear brothers and sisters, how can you claim to have faith in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ if you only favor some people over other people? If we choose not to love specific neighbors, then who are we as the church? And that's usually when people go, but there's no but.
Yeah,
there's not. We are called to love, and we are called to reach out to people group. And when you know that there is a need, you have a responsibility. It's just that simple. And I'm telling you, there is a need. There is never not going to be a need.
Absolutely.
So what can we do? Well, first of all, we have to be willing to love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way we love is that we're willing to change.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't say, I love you, but I'm going to keep doing things the way I'm doing them, which are not very practical for you. Because then I don't really love you.
Right.
And that's just a biblical Jesus thing, right? Love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to be willing to listen to what the parents have to say.
Absolutely. And I think along with that, we need to have a variety of options for families. So kind of like we said about the adults, you cannot just say, if any child or adult or in between, if you have special needs, this room is designated for you, right? So however, we also can't say every child gets a shadow, because, which is, my church has a good variety of options for us, but both of my girls have a shadow. And so they do all the things all the other kids do, but with a one-on-one that helps them through it. The thing is that there was a time, or there are children who can't do the loud music and the 50,000 kids in the room with them and the crafts and so maybe that is a kid who would do better with a smaller room with fewer kids and a Bible story, a Bible lesson geared to them. So having variety and listening to the parents and knowing where their kid would fit best would be really helpful.
Being able to brainstorm to try different things.
Right.
And if those things don't work, you try something different.
Yes.
Because you might not get to the right solution for a particular child the first try. It might take 2 or 3 tries. We know because we're the parents and we've had to go through that.
Right.
You know, I mean, I've had challenges with my kids where we're trying to find solutions and our first idea is not the best idea.
Right.
And it's going to be the same at church. Asking questions. I love to hear of special needs families going to church and maybe like they tried it and it was chaos and they know it was chaos. But the way that the church responds, it's not to say, whoa, we can't deal with this. This is overwhelming. But they're coming to the parents and they're saying, this was so overwhelming, but we really want you to be here. So please help us figure out what we can do so that your child can be included.
Right.
And it's that attitude and that desire that makes a huge difference.
Anya had her own little bucket, and they don't need to use it as much because she's really grown and gotten a lot more, better able to handle it. But she had her own little bucket, and in it was the behavior chart that we used at home and at school, a small laminated copy of it, some paintbrushes, because that's a big sensory thing for her, and the things that she, they had like a it's spirally and it stretches.
Like a slinky?
No, people hook their keys on them
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like a laner.
Yeah, right. That she could play with and mess with during the lesson. And it was her own box that had things tailored to her in it to help her through that hour.
Yes. Which that would be something super practical for the teachers to do. So, I mean, that would be once the church is finally at the point where they're ready to do something and include the kids, to look at each child individually to see what helps them. Right. And I mean, and as a side note, because we're not talking about disability ministry per se, but good teaching and good solutions for kids with special needs is just plain good teaching for all kids. And those are going to be solutions that you can implement for all kids.
Yeah.
Because every child is unique. I mentioned this briefly before. If you see a special needs parent sitting in the foyer, go sit with them.
Yes.
Don't ever let them sit on their own. I think one of my favorite times at church was a time when I went and I sat with a friend in the foyer, and that was not enough. So what we did is that it was obviously summer because it was nice outside. We went outside and we just pushed him in his wheelchair around the parking lot, and we had the best conversation. And I am telling you, it was a holy moment. It didn't happen in the sanctuary, but it happened as we were pushing her son in the parking lot. And that's where I say, don't let the special needs parents sit on their own. Call when you notice that they're not there, call them. I see a lot of churches that have like a compassion ministry, and a lot of churches call it compassion ministry. And what they do is that when church members have a crisis or something comes up, they go and they help them mow the lawn or shovel the snow or bring them a meal. How wonderful if churches recognize that a lot of times, special needs families, there are crises that come at us that other families don't have, that compassion ministry became part of that outreach to special needs families. So that's something super practical. Invite them to be a part of your small group.
Yes.
And if you can come up with babysitters, even better, so they don't have to. Not necessary. It could just be invite them to be a part of your small group. I think about women, we need connections.
Yeah.
If the ladies from church are going to gather, don't think that just because it's on the bulletin, they're going to show up. Be intentional about asking directly, hey, we're having a ladies' lunch. It's going to be this Wednesday at 12 o'clock at Perkins, and we would love to have you. What can we do to make it happen? Because we really want to get to know you.
Right. I
mean, even if you're not a special needs parent, you want someone to ask you like that.
Yeah.
And it's the same. Our husbands are obviously not here today, but I'm sure that even for guys, just being asked makes a huge difference.
I think sometimes people might be afraid to invite a family with a child with special needs into their small group because they don't know how they will accommodate their child. So my response to that would be, let them help you come up with that solution. I've been invited to small groups that we've said no to because we just couldn't. There was just no way for us to. But being invited is a real blessing in and of itself,
Yeah.
So right now what we do is we do have someone come watch the girls. Or the other thing we do sometimes is we have it at our house. And then I love to have a respite worker in with me, but if that doesn't work out and it's just me, my girls go to bed fairly early. So my small group my girls will hang out with my small group, and we will eat some dinner and munch on some snacks and hang out and visit. And then I'll put the girls to bed, and then we'll dive into our study. So there are ways around it, but it's hard. Larry was the one who wanted a small group. I didn't. And because it's hard work for me, there's nothing easy about being a part of a small group, but my husband was really needing the connection with people that I was getting through other parents with special needs and things of that sort, and he wasn't getting. And so I caved, And I'm so glad I did.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth every single second of the effort. So give another family a chance. Even if they say no, give them a chance to be a part of that.
Absolutely. And and I often say for churches in general, if you serve the special needs families and they know that their kids are well taken care of and their kids are being served, then you get workers, because now those special needs parents can then serve out of their gifts and their talents in other areas of the church. And so it's not like all you do as a church is give to special needs families. No, we're not just leeches and just sucking the life out of people from church. We have something to give too. Mm-hmm. And so do our kids, and so do adults with disabilities. I mean, we're all connected. That's, again, part of being the body of Christ. And with inviting people to be a part of a small group, I think it just recognizes, it's a way of giving recognition of value. Like, we would value you to be a part of this group because you have something to contribute to our conversation.
Absolutely.
You have different life experiences and things that you can bring into our group as we talk and get to know each other, and we get to know what God is doing in our lives. I mean, it's an encouragement for everybody. And I would say for people that are afraid, if you don't take the plunge and if you don't invite people, you're always going to be afraid. And it's okay to be uncomfortable around disability if you have never been around people with disabilities. But if you keep choosing not to be surrounded people with disabilities, at some point it is a choice.
Yes.
And the only way to not be uncomfortable is to surround yourself people who are different.
Right.
So anything else, things that churches can do to make things better for us. So there's a lot of heartache for special needs families attending church, but there's a lot of joy, and there are churches that are actually doing it right. And so we're going to talk about those. And I'm going to say our last church, we had a very small church, and about 75% of our church was impacted by disability in one way or another. We had a large percentage of adults with disabilities, a large percentage of caregivers. Either they worked at a job caring for people with disabilities, or they had people with disabilities living in their home and they were married to someone with a disability. And we had a large number of special needs parents, and we had a large number of kids with disabilities, and we had more kids with disabilities than typical children in our kids program. So it was very unique. And I would say that the beauty of our church doing it right is that we kind of let the disabled people lead the way.
Yeah.
You're here. What do we need to do so that you feel like you're a part of our congregation? Same with the parents. What would be helpful to you? I mean, even when we first created our sensory room, it was us moms, because a lot of us had kids that could really benefit from a sensory room. And we started saying, well, I have a ball that I can, donate. I have a swing.
Right.
Then it became what it became. So we were a very, very small church. And I bring this up because I think there's a misconception that you need to be a large church to do disability ministry right. And we were a micro church. So we had we were 80 people at the most. And because of the disability piece, we never had 80 people at the same time. Our average Sunday was only 50 people. And we had the most, a thriving disability ministry. And I feel privileged to have been a part of this church. So I mentioned that because it's my favorite church in disability ministry, but I'm biased. Another church, and because I asked on Facebook, somebody linked to Grace Church in Kansas has what's called the SOAR Special Needs Ministry. And I absolutely loved it. And I was telling Erin about this before we got started. They have, they include all the kids. So they do their best to include every single kid with everything that they're doing on a Sunday. Their kids program, they do support groups for parents, and maybe they don't call them support group. I can't remember what they're called. They do respite nights. They do summer camps for kids with disabilities during the summer, and they do, after school programs or something like that. They have like a video crew and a photography crew, and they do really great.
That's cool.
If I ever go to Kansas, I'm gonna go and visit Grace Church. There's Rockford First. This is in Illinois, and they do Champions Club. And Champions Club is really a phenomenal model of special needs ministry. This is a separate special needs ministry. So this is not a buddy system. This is separate.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, our church, our little tiny church, modeled Champions Club. And Champions Club started in a mega church, one of the biggest in all of the U.S. So we were able to take their model and make it applicable to our little tiny church. So this can be duplicated at any church. And it's really neat. It moves kids from 4 different stations, and they learn and they sing and they dance and they move and they do all sorts of stuff, and they learn about God's word in a way that kids can actually learn it. So they're very intentional about discipleship for kids with disabilities. So that's Rockford First and Champions Club. They were awesome. There's a Zanesville Alliance Church in Ohio, and they have a Caring Hearts ministry. They have a large number of adults with disabilities who attend the church, and they really have a thriving disability ministry for children. And they do what they call friendship parties, and they just kind of get together and they do a friendship party, I guess. Mm-hmm. They do stuff for the kids, and they have lessons, and it's like a big vacation Bible school that happens. I think they do them once a month.
Okay.
And so these are just a few examples, because of course we know that there are more churches. And Erin, you mentioned Johnny and Friends.
Yeah, Johnny and Friends, and we'll have to see if we can find it and link to it if they actually have it on their website. Otherwise, you can definitely call them. Johnny and Friends keeps a list of churches throughout the United States and probably throughout the world, to tell you the truth, that do have disability ministries. And so they are a great source. In fact, also, if you have a Johnny and Friends in your area, they will also come to your church if you're wanting to start a disability ministry and guide you through that and give you tips and suggestions, considering the space that you have and the people that you have. So they're a great resource.
Yeah, but I do that too. So you guys call me first.
I call Ellen. But really, giving you, if you don't live in Kansas, or you don't live in Illinois, or you don't live in Ohio, going to those websites and looking at the ideas that they have can help you when you tell the church or what you need as a family, or if your church wants to start a disability ministry. Those are great places to look into and learn from.
And Johnny and Friends does have offices scattered throughout, not just the U.S., but the world. So when you do contact them, you learn who, what area you fall under the Johnny and Friends. And every single Johnny and Friends does have a church relations director.
Mm-hmm.
So their job
curriculum too.
It's true. Their job is to help your church. So they are a great resource. And I know that this has nothing to do with churches. However, because we're talking about Johnny and Friends.
I know. I was just thinking the same thing.
Summer camps. Mm-hmm. And we are inviting you guys listening or watching to sign up for a Johnny and Friends summer camp, because they are amazing. It's a family camp. It is.
So your whole family goes, but if you have a family member who needs a one-on-one, they're assigned a one-on-one. So real quick description. It's 5 days, 4 nights. The closest one to me is in Michigan, but they're all over the United States. Mm-hmm. You mornings, so you have breakfast and you're one-on-one. So we have a one-on-one for Oksana and Anya. They have breakfast with you. They have all their meals with you. And then they go off and the kids have a blast. It's almost like a VBS program, but games and activities and crafts. All the parents get teaching from a pastor. And there's a day where they do massages for parents and, there's activities. So then you meet back together for lunch. And then the afternoon is free time. Again, your one-on-one is with you. I think we're required to give them an hour break in the day. Do you remember?
An hour.
Was it an hour?
Mm-hmm.
So you can go zip lining or swimming, or, there's every different location has a bunch of different activities.
And when we say zip lining, it is completely accessible, and it doesn't matter the level of physical ability that someone has. They will get those kids or adults that want to go zip lining down the zip line. It's incredible.
Yeah, Oksana loved it.
It's incredible.
So your afternoon is your family time. Your one-on-ones do come with you. And then you gather again for dinner. And then every evening is a special event. So there's like a Western night, and there's an ice cream social, and there's a talent show, and then there's a parents' date night. So those one-on-ones take all the kids, and they bounce on bounce houses and watch movies and eat pizza, while the parents are served a wonderful dinner and have different activities that they can do just as a couple.
Mm-hmm.
It's my happy place.
It is. It's
my
really
happy
phenomenal.
place.
And when they match your child one-on-one, they call you. Someone calls you. I mean, you send a questionnaire about your child so they can find someone to match them, but then they call you to ask you more questions about your child so that they really match the best person possible with the best experience that person has with your child.
Well, and I'll add too that the one-on-ones are short-term missionaries. They raise money to do this. This is a mission trip for them. They're there to serve your family. They're amazing. We have had some of the best STMs. I know you've even seen your STM.
I've had the best because we email with her. She's come to visit us. She sends us presents. She's
They're really incredible people that serve these families and these kids for the week. I can't say enough about it.
And it's empowering for everyone in the family, but especially for kids.
Siblings.
They do amazing things for the siblings. But I think, as I think about Nina, I remember when she said, "Mom, there are so many kids in wheelchairs just like me." And that was empowering for her because she was not the only one, and she's used to being the only one.
It's a little
with a physical disability.
Disability is so normal there. No one blinks when your kid makes weird noises.
Mm-hmm.
No one blinks when your kid whops the person next to them because they got too close, which happened to Anya. She got whopped by a big guy because she got too close to him. And they do have sib groups. So groups of siblings that have siblings with special needs. So typical siblings. And it's a chance they're really built into. They have a big bonfire party one night and just a chance for them to be with other people who understand what it is to have a sibling with a disability.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
It is really, really great. So if you guys have never been to a Johnny and Friends retreat, look into it because it's great. And the connections, they break the moms into groups. They break the guys into groups. And I know that guys are notoriously known for not sharing their feelings, but I think they go to Johnny and Friends and they share their feelings in the guys group. So it's the one place where it's okay to do that.
And let me add one more thing. This is not just for families with kids with disabilities. This is for families impacted by disability.
Yes.
So I've seen families where one of the parents has a disability.
Yes.
So keep that in mind too.
Yes. And the last night there is a talent show, and I'm telling you, there is nothing better.
It's the best.
It's
the best.
It is the most incredible talent show. I know by this world standards, it's not, but I was crying at some point. It's so great.
Amazing.
I mean, I laughed, I cried, I clapped, and my shy kid played the piano. So
yeah.
Anyway, so that's that, to finish on a very fun note. So our freebie again, it's the handout for the 5 stages. These are the 5 stages of disability attitudes. It is a great tool for you to look at where you fall in the disability attitudes. But if you want to take that to your church, it is the most amazing conversation starter. If you're someone that doesn't want to talk, you don't know what to say, you don't have to. You just print it out, give it to your pastor. That's it. It has great questions. It's a 2-sided handout. Of course, you don't have to print it double-sided. But it's the 5 stages, and then there's some questions of reflection. So that's the freebie. Again, if you go to ellenstumble.com episode 14. That's the number 14, episode 14. Scroll down. There's a bright orange button. Click on it, and you are going to get the 5 stages. So we just talked about the challenges that we face going to churches, especially needs families. We talked about things that would be helpful, and we mentioned some churches that are doing it right. We would love for you to leave a review. And somebody said, Ellen, how do we even leave a review? So because we're on iTunes, I'm pretty sure you have to have an iTunes account. And not everybody has an iTunes account. So if you don't have an iTunes account, that's fine. Just send your podcast to everybody in your email list and everybody you know. There's a solution. But if you do have an iTunes account, search for Unexceptional Moms. Once you get to our page, there's a tab right there that says reviews. You click on that and then add review, and you can add it right there. And we would love your reviews.
Absolutely.
And you guys, thanks for listening, because this is my favorite thing to talk about.
Yes.
My daughter says,
this one.
Yes, my daughter says, Mom, this is your job from God. And absolutely, I will be an ally to the disability community for as long as I have a voice. So,
all right.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next week.
Bye.
Bye.